We are live. Welcome, ladies and gents, to Media's live show, episode 6. I've been looking forward to this all week, and at the same time, dreading it. Uh, but first things first. Uh, hey, can you tell which one of these is from the actual? Jesus Christ! I'm looking at this now, and it's so bad. Can you tell which one's the OC team? In that text, I didn't put an outline on it. Like I chose a good color, but it needed an outline. Like you can barely it's blending in. This image was made in 2016 by me. Using I had to have just been using Image Flip. The meme maker website. That's the only that and God, what would I have been using? They can actually, because I was still using Movie Maker for all my video editing, and Movie Maker can't really do stuff like this. So I had to have been doing it like by hand or no. You know what I was using? I was using Microsoft Paint. I was copy pasting images into Microsoft Paint and then lining them up that way, and then using the text feature on that. That's how I made this image. And there is more to this image too. It's got the other OCs. Some of which I don't remember their names. Like I don't remember her name. I remember she was is there a way I can like have my clicker? So like bottom right here, actually, let's pull up my display capture. Gonna get weird. And then how do I? No, that's not gonna work. Um. Okay, yeah. That's not working as I was hoping. Um. But yeah, bottom right. With the mole. I can't remember her name. The one next to her is the Fall Maiden. Don't remember blue hairy guy's name. Guy with the goatee is something Nikos. This is supposed to be like Pyrrha's great granddad. Then you have I actually remember all four of these guys. The one with the dark background. They're the Atlas crew. You have a from left to right. You have a Blackwater. I think her name was Ebony. She was kind of the Ironwood of her generation. Then you have the Winter Maiden, and then Weiss's grandfather, who, boy, did I miss the mark on that one. And then yeah, the Vacuo crew. I remember all the Vacuo crew. They become a lot more relevant throughout RWBYond. Then of course I remember the whole Veil crew because they're like intrinsically related to Ruby and Jean. Um, but anyway, that's a bit of a preview for my fan fiction that we will get into later. I just realized I left my Dinosaur Sanctuary volume on my couch. I usually don't do that. Yeah, I was rereading that for reasons. I'm just gonna leave it in. Live show. So what did I watch this week? The big thing I what did I watch? So I've been mostly actually revisiting the Ruby soundtracks this week. I'm not gonna get into that because I've already made podcasts on it before. My opinions of it haven't changed. Um One Piece chapter. Baby Loki is cracked. There's not much really happened. There's a lot of setup of stuff that will probably come into play later on. But I am still leaning towards the fact that Loki is not going to join the Straw Hats, but he will join the Grand Fleet. He will be an ally, and he will be like kind of on the same playing field as like a Momonosuke. Like that's kind of the role he's going to have at the end of this arc. And then I think Haruden will become the new king of Elbaf. Haruden will become the new king of Elbaf. Loki will become the new captain of the giant warrior pirates and join the Grand Fleet. But yeah, we're still like fairly early on in the backstory. We just got Loki's birth. We might be seeing Rocksteady Zebek next chapter, so that's exciting. Oh, and then the confirmation that like Shanks just wanted to vibe out at sea with Buggy, which is really adorable, and I want them to be happy. They deserve it. But they're probably gonna die, or at least Shanks is probably gonna die. As far as the episode goes, we're at what I think is actually the most tragic part of Kuma's backstory. I kind of hinted at this a few weeks ago, because Ginny's death was tragic for sure. Like one of the most tragic things to happen in the history of One Piece. But at the same time, it's like she knew what she was getting herself into. She had been a slave before. She was part of the revolution. She was fighting. She knew the risks, and the ultimate fate was kind of standard One Piece fare, if I'm being honest. Like people who live entirely in flashbacks in One Piece don't tend to have a happy ending. Like, I don't see any real difference between Ginny and, say, Belmare or Nico Olivia, Robin's mom, or Tom. But the systematic dismantling of the Egghead family is something that there will be no justice for until Emu is dethroned. Because they could have just left well enough alone, let Vegapunk do his research, let Kuma be with his daughter, let Kizaru and Sentomaru just be cool with them. But no, they had to tighten their grip on the throat of the world. They had to keep pushing Vegapunk around. They had to, like, they could have picked any admiral to go to Egghead. They didn't even have to pick an admiral. They could have sent some of the God's Knights. Like, what the fuck were they doing during the whole Egghead incident? No, they purposely used Kizaru because they wanted to cause as much pain to Vegapunk as possible, and they wanted, in my opinion, they wanted to teach Kizaru a lesson. They were challenging Kizaru in that moment. They were like, you work for us. You are our dog. We will have you kill your best friends for defying us, and we will do the same to you if you try to join them. Just absolute fucking evil. Anyway, the only other thing I watched this week was actually there were two other things. Witch Watch episode, new opening, kind of shit. Not a fan. And the new episode was alright. I like Nemu Meow's interaction with Wolf. I keep hearing that they steal the show, and I can kind of see the start of that happening. And the other thing I finished was our last crusade or whatever I've talked about a few times on the live show. I finished season 1 of that, and it's mediocre. I'm not gonna bother with season 2. I don't care how hot Alice is. It's just not. The character dynamics just aren't good enough. The voice acting is too annoying. The world building is just too dumb. So I'm dropping it. And moving on to something else, which is good because new anime season, as I talked about last week, looks pretty stacked. And next week I will have to dedicate a lot of time to going over that. What else? What else as far as housekeeping goes? God, next week I'm also gonna have to do a video about Jurassic World Rebirth, or talk about it on the live show rather, because I'm gonna be seeing that this weekend probably. I think Superman's also coming out next week. I'm not sure if I'm going to watch the new Superman movie in theaters. I know I'm not going to watch the new Fantastic Four movie in theaters. There's just too many red flags for me. I don't like Pedro Pascal. I don't like that they changed Silver Surfer, or that they're using a super obscure alt version of Silver Surfer that's a woman just for progressive brownie points. It's not a creative decision. It's a business one. And I hate that. Comics, like, business decisions have always been a big part of comic books, but like, you need to at least pretend like it's a creative decision too. Otherwise, I don't have a reason to care. I do not have a reason to care about this version of the Fantastic Four, because everything I've seen from it is just audience committee the movie. It's just audience committee pandering put to film. Anyway, enough about cringing about Marvel and DC and anime in general. Let's get on to the main subject. Did I want to use big head, small display, or big display, small head? How does this look? Trying to think what looks the best. Get another light back there. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 lights down here, but then that area back behind me is just gets no light at all. If I open up the door and turn on the stair light, that'll help give me some backlighting. I don't know. Anyway, back in 2016, specifically February 9th, 2016, fresh off of, actually, I don't even think Volume 3 was over yet. I think Volume 3 still had like an episode or two left to go. I started writing fan fiction for RWBY. And I don't remember much of it. There's a lot that I have forgotten for sure. There's a few things I do remember though. Actually, there's a lot of like plot stuff that I remember and lore stuff I remember, because I spend so much time thinking about that. But anyway, so it was actually as early on as the midway point of Volume 2, I started thinking up ideas of a RWBY fanfiction, and I was wanting to be a writer. I was really like starting to like lean more and more towards that, because I had always been like a storyteller, someone who always came up with characters and stories, but like never put them to paper. And I was really getting anxiety about that in my early 20s. I was 23 when I started working on this. My God, I'm getting and RWBY's just ripe for that. I need to make a Substack article about this or something, or even a video, like an honest look at fixing RWBY. Is actually a legit video title that I might be working on in the near future. RWBY's just ripe for that kind of exploitation, because it's got so many cool ideas and so many fun characters, but is also just absolute fucking nonsense. And so that's where I was leaning towards. And I was also just really into RWBY, like more into RWBY than I was at anything else at that time. And so I came up with all these ideas, and I even was like, okay, a lot of this is going to hinge on how Volume 3 works out. So I'm going to wait until to see how Volume 3 plays out before I finalize this outline and get started. Volume 3 took things way further than I thought they were going to, and it caused me to kind of like have to take a few weeks to rework my entire outline because I had to account for the fact that Pyrrha wasn't going to be around. And in the meantime, I literally threw this fic together out of like thin air. Didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. Didn't spend a whole lot of time writing it. Spent zero, zero time editing it. And that, I remember, is going to be my biggest problem with this revisiting it. The fact that I did not do any editing and I did like no proofreading either. This is a first draft that has remained in its kind of. Actually, I think I did rewrite some of the chapters for this later on. But for the most part, yeah, I would have had to, judging by this author's note. Uh, I had to have rewritten at least the first chunk of this at some point. Um, but even so, like, it probably wasn't that much better. Uh, this is the very first fanfic I started working on. The RWBYond title was not even thought of yet. That would come about a week or two later. Uh, and the premise of the story is that it bounces back and forth between the story of Team Stark and the story of the 16 individuals who helped found the 4 Huntsman Academies. So without further ado, let's get into this. Stark, Tales of the Old Huntsman. Author's note, rewrite. Stark Tales of the Old Huntsman has been rewritten. The basics are the same, but the focus is now just on brief stories about the various goings-on in the story. So I'd like for you to read from the beginning because there are changes to make this fit better with what I've done in RWBYond Veil, which as of the upload of this rewrite will end in 2.5 hours. Okay, so yeah, I rewrote the first however much was written at this point when I finished RWBYond Veil. So yeah, I do know that this has the earlier upload date, and as I go through all my old fan fictions, I'm gonna do it in like release order. Uh, but yeah, by the time I wrote it in this version, I had a much better idea like what I would later on do with RWBYond Veil. I have no idea what the changes are. I straight up don't remember. Like, it wasn't until I read this author's note that I remembered that I even made changes to this. Anyway, Chapter 1, Arthur Ark, The Tiresome War. Arthur Ark was a man born in the heat of war. The Great War had swept through all of Remnant and stayed there for centuries. No one knew why the war started. Maybe it was because of a simple border dispute. Maybe it was the assassination of a prince. Maybe it was a rebel incursion in Mantle that was bankrolled by the now nameless Lost Kingdom. A nation that was wiped off the face of the earth, or the face of the planet, when Mantle found out. But all the records were lost. All knowledge from before the war was lost. All hope was lost. Arthur was just the latest in a long line of arcs. They were all warriors, but they all failed to live a long life. Arthur had lost his father when he was only 10 years old. His father, too, had been orphaned at a similar age for the same reason. No one was safe from this war. It had gone on to the point where no one could even remember the reason. Now all there was the hatred at those that perpetuated the violence. Arthur's first battle was against an invading Mantle fleet. He had unlocked his semblance that day, and with it, managed to put a shield strong enough to block a cannon shot. Put up a shield strong enough to block a cannon shot. The people he saved that day had thanked him and paraded him around like a hero. The indomitable Arthur Ark, they called him. Hero of Vale. So, quick aside, while I blow my nose. Sorry about that. For those of you who don't know me very well, I have a actual like growth in my nose that makes my nose all stuffy. Like I've had that for many, many years. It makes breathing very difficult. And until I have enough disposable income to get it surgically removed, it is something I will have to deal with. But Arthur, obviously, a play on King Arthur, and he's obviously Jean's great grandfather. Yeah, great grandfather. But the basis of him and really this whole fic is the statue that's in front of Beacon. I'm gonna look this up because I want to show like early volume 1 opening. I want to show the very specific shot. This. This statue here. That Jean is looking at. Oh, meant to make it bigger. Where it shows like the guy with the sword. You don't get a whole really good shot of him in the opening. But Jean's looking at it, and you got a guy with the sword and girl with the axe. I created lore for them. That's Arthur Ark, and that's why he is looking at that. Like that's his idol. That's who he wants to be like. And then she is Acacia Glens, who you will meet in this fic. And this is like kind of a celebration of like the two founders of Beacon Academy, triumphing over the Grim in order to end the Great War. And that's the legacy that Jean wants to like live up to. That little bit in the opening of him looking at the statue was the entire genesis of this fic specifically. It was soon afterwards that Arthur became a captain. He led his men to numerous victories and countless defeats. It was clear that Vale was struggling. The people lived in poverty while those in the capital lived in luxury. But the soldiers, the fact that Arthur was quickly becoming one of the strongest fighters in Vale did not bode well. They didn't have the seemingly endless dust resources and advanced dust-based firearms of Mantle. They didn't have the great strategists and military precision that the Mistral Spartans had. None of them, no, even the 100 strongest men in Vale, couldn't stand up to the Vacuo raiders. Any attempt to infiltrate the Desert Kingdom ended in disaster. One day, a temporary truce was signed between Vale and Mistral. Arthur, who had just been promoted to general, teamed up with Mistral General Orion Nikos. That's the guy with the goatee. 600 men in total marched through the desert pass in an attempt to apprehend the Vacuo guardian Alistair Mordred, based on Mordred the Black Knight. Mordred had come alone, brandishing his mace. The fight lasted less than an hour. Mordred's semblance controlled gravity, one of the fundamental forces of the planet. The invaders never stood a chance. Even with Nikos' magnetism and Arthur's hard light semblance, Nikos was scarred across the eye with his own spear. Arthur's shoulder was dislocated by a blow from Mordred's mace. In the end, the three leaders were the only ones still breathing, and Mordred had spared them. Misspelled spared. There's going to be a lot of spelling errors, typos, missing punctuation, missing capitalization, because of the lack of proofreading that went into RWBYond in general. It's just something I'm going to have to try to make heads or tails of when I come across it. He told them to go back home and fight him when they believed they were a threat. While Arthur recovered from the brutal beating, he met a beautiful nurse. She cared for him, even long after his bones had mended. And they got married and had a son. But Arthur was tired. He was tired of this war. He refused to let his son be orphaned too. He refused to have his son suffer his fate, so he pleaded with King Charles to take a more defensive approach. Charles initially refused, but upon counseling with the wizard Ozpin, he put Arthur in charge of Vale's security. Arthur Ark had officially become a guardian. Another big thing in this fic, and really the whole RWBYond saga, is that line from Ozpin, like, a soldier is a symbol, an army is a symbol of conflict, a guardian is a symbol of security. And a lot of these fics, big theme is like the difference between a soldier being trained to fight people and a guardian being trained to fight Grimm. Which goes into the way, which really goes into the way that I characterize Salem in this series, and how she's very different here than she is in canon. Mostly because I wrote the vast majority of RWBYond and the time span between volumes 3 and 4. So, I didn't know about the relics. I didn't know about Salem's immortality. I didn't know about Watts, Tyrion, or Hazel. I didn't know about the other headmasters. I didn't know about the Raven being a bandit. I had to try to come up with ideas and answers on my own throughout the whole process. Arthur felt as though this was what was always meant to be. The downside was that he spent most of his time on the border, far away from his family. But his mind and semblance were much better suited for defense than offense. He heard word that General Nikos had taken a similar position in Mistral. Though the two were at war, Arthur had a grudging respect for the Spartan commander, just as he had a fear of Alistair Mordred and the other raiders. General Thurston, who left nothing but black ash in his wake. No one could ever confirm what Thurston looked like or if he even existed. Haiyan Wukong, Sun's great-grandfather, who had single-handedly beaten 1,000 Mantle stormtroopers in less than an hour. Arthur had seen the footage. Wukong could summon an entire army with his semblance. Lastly, Mei Long, who could split a mountain with her fist, so the legend said. I don't know why I made Ty's grandmother be from Vacuo. Especially in hindsight, where it seems like nobody is from Vale. So you got Ozpin is, predates the kingdoms. Belinda, probably from Vale. Ruby and Yang are from Patch, which is within Vale's territory, but Blake's from Menagerie, Weiss is from Atlas. Jean, Nora, Ren, and Pyrrha are all from Mistral. Ren and Nora are from Kuroyuri. Pyrrha is from Altus. Argus. I was totally blanking on what the name of the city was. Argus. And Jean, it's never actually explicitly stated that he's from Mistral, but we know that he at least vacationed there a lot and that his sister lives in Argus. So it's implied that Jean may actually be from Mistral. And in which case, I was way off, making him the only one from Vale proper. But yeah, Mei Long, such a dumb name. But then one day, Arthur was reminded of the real threat. The Grimm had been mankind's greatest enemy since the beginning of time, but with the advancement of weaponry, it was believed the Grimm were no longer a threat. Even the mightiest of Grimm would fall to the new dust rounds. But, as Arthur imagined must have happened before, the Grimm were back. They were back with a vengeance. They were stronger than they ever had been before. The papers called it a Deathstalker after the fact. A strange new scorpion-type Grimm. One sting from its tail could shatter a man's aura. Arthur had never fought anything like it before. He had no idea how to fight such a primal beast. He could match it blow for blow, but the same could not be said for his men. And the more they panicked, the more Grimm came. In the end, Arthur was the only one left. He had barely beaten the Deathstalker. his sword shattering on its armor, and the Grimm that followed it. Why is that part there? Shattering on its armor. The sentence should have ended there. But he suffered a massive wound to his stomach. He had been rescued by a scouting party. They brought him to a tent to be healed. While he was there, he was approached by the wizard and his aide. They told him that this new Grimm was only the beginning. They were a Grimm more powerful than he could possibly imagine, and in just a few years' time, they would gather and wipe out humanity. But there were people who could combat this threat if only the kingdoms could unite, or at least their greatest warriors. Among them were 4 maidens. Each had power over the elements as well as the power of a season. One of them was in Mantle and already working with Ozpin. 2 others were unaccounted for, but the other, the Spring Maiden, was on the island of Patch. This is actually wrong. I retconned this to where one other was unaccounted for. Summer was unaccounted for. They know who the Fall Maiden is at this point, or at least they suspect. I can't remember. I remember who the Fall Maiden of this era is because I don't know. I just do. Anyway, but the Spring Maiden, was on the island of Patch. Ozpin tasked him with convincing this maiden to help him combat this threat. Her power and prestige would be a unifying factor in gathering the forces of humanity, because as he explained, the threat of extinction is more than enough for even the most spiteful people to set aside their differences. Even if the peace was only temporary, this threat needs to be dealt with immediately. So that was chapter 1. Factual Sealer asked, what fanfic is this? This is STRQ Tales of the Old Huntsmen. To answer your question. Yeah, it's STRQ Tales of the Old Huntsmen. It's my very first fanfic. In fact, I should probably actually put a link in where I'm at. I'm on chapter 2 now. There. You can follow along now. So, another problem I have with this story in particular is that it really should have just been 2 separate stories because of jump back and forth between the STRQ stuff and the Old Huntsman stuff. But I did this not as a creative decision, but as a business one, because I knew people wouldn't actually give a shit about a bunch of Great War OCs. And that's what I wanted to write about, more than I wanted to write about Team STRQ. Though I did want to write about Team STRQ. So here's the second chapter. This will serve as the introduction. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read the author's notes anymore. Chapter 2, Summer Rose, the last rose of the flower patch. That's such a mouthful of a title. Summer Rose was born without any pomp and circumstance. She was healthy from the day she was born. Her mother and father were quite the legendary huntsmen, but they never put their faces out there. The thing her father was most known for was winning the Vital Festival tournament during his time at Beacon. Her mother had a similar reputation, but did everything she could to stay humble, to the point where only those who had met her knew anything about her. This is a stylistic thing that, like, it's not, like, super wrong, but it's something I would never do now. But, like, ending the sentence there and then starting another, then having to the point where only those who had met her knew anything about her, I would not have that as its own sentence. I would have that as, like, I would either use an M dash or just a comma there. They were very private people. They were very loving people. They were adored in their hometown of Patch. They were Julia Season and Violet Rose. Julia Season is such a silly name. But it's a silly story about a silly group of goobers. Uh, they were treasures to the world, but Summer just called them Daddy and Mommy. She always took after her mother, but with her father's thick, dark red hair. And Summer's life was like a fairy tale. Her parents were heroes who lived happily ever after, and they got to spend that happy ending with their beloved daughter. Until at the age of 10, they were both taken from her. Their weapons and parts of their clothes were found broken, tattered, and torn in the old barn house that rested on the fringes of the island. It was a passerby that discovered their remains. After that, Summer went to live with the matriarch of Patch, Gardenia Granny Glenn's, ran the biggest grocery store on the island. Her family had run the island for generations. The legendary hero Acacia Glenn's, who helped end the Great War, had once resided in that very same home. That barn house. I did some silly things with it throughout RWBYond. I remember that is where Yang was taking Ruby in the burning the candle flashback. Uh, and there's like I came up with an explanation, but it's like a really like why would a well lead into a tomb? Like why would a tomb have an entranceway through a well that's just in a barn house? Like that doesn't make any sense. Summer mourned for a while, but came back out of her shell with the help of Granny Glenn's and her daughter Daisy. Daisy was a few years older than Summer, but they were inseparable for many years. There shouldn't be a but there. But it became clear that they had different dreams. Daisy wanted a simple, quiet life on Patch. Summer wanted to become a huntress, just like her parents and their parents before them. She received rudimentary training from Granny Glenn's. The matriarch had been quite the huntress in her time. Not many in that profession lived to see the ripe old age she had, and from her knowledge of aura and semblance, it was clear to see how she had done it. Summer discovered her semblance was speed. She joined Signal Academy, where she studied under a man named Octavius. I don't know if I ever went anywhere with that. She became proficient with the halberd rifle flail combo weapon. She named it Lunar Rose. She worked herself half to death to be the strongest she could be. At the age of 14, she killed her first Grim. A Beowulf was hanging around the cliffside. Cliffside should not be capitalized. It was still a juvenile Grim, and she had her instructor watching her back, but she dealt with the Grim quickly. White rose petals had drifted from her speed semblance into the wind as she sliced the beast across the stomach. It was exhilarating. She developed a taste for battle after that. So long as it was against the Grim, sadly, combat preliminary schools didn't do a lot of Grim fighting. It was mostly combat practice and spars, that plus other rudimentary schoolwork. She understood why. She couldn't last long in Remnant if you can't should be can't, not couldn't. You can't last long in Remnant if you can't defend yourself. Huntsmen specialize again, this should be present tense. Huntsmen specialize in fighting Grim, but everyone learned some combat that they could use in their day-to-day lives. Patch was primarily a farming community, so farmers would need to defend their rural land against the rogue monsters that sought to kill them. Therefore, even those who had no desire to be huntsmen could find use for a weapon. At age 16, she moved back into her family's house. It had belonged to the Rose family for as long as there had been a town on Patch. Living here was her birthright, even and especially since, as of the present, she was the last Rose on Patch. As far as anyone knew, she was the only one in the world. A year later, she graduated from Signal. She applied for Beacon Academy and was accepted right away. Professor Ozpin had personally thanked her for picking Beacon, as if she'd go anywhere else. He had known her parents and was looking forward to seeing what she could do. Granny Glynns warned her to be weary of Ozpin and Professor Bronwyn, the history teacher. Granny Glynns knew them well and didn't trust them a bit. Summer wondered why she had her last dinner. Summer wondered why she had her last dinner among her loved ones. Granny Glynns forced her to stay. She had stayed up late conversing with Daisy and her husband. She was envious of Daisy. She got what she always wanted so much quicker than Summer had. She was married with a little baby, while Summer was taking the first step into achieving her dream and becoming a huntress. Summer woke up early that day. She already had her stuff packed and ready to go. It seemed like all of Patch had come out to see her off. Some even made remarks that another Rose is going off to become a hero, and others claimed that another Rose is going off to wilt. Summer wondered what they meant by that. Before the ship set out, she was greeted by some of her friends. The Snaps family in particular were getting ready for their honeymoon. Before Summer left, they gave her a cleaning kit for her weapon. Daisy gave her a cookbook, Granny Glynns gave her a sewing kit, Octavius gave her a flute, even though she didn't know how to play anything other than piano. The last words anyone told her before the ship left came from Granny Glynns. I'm proud of you, but don't let this life destroy you as it did your parents. Summer assumed she meant to not let herself be killed, but that seemed like a given. It was no secret how dangerous a huntsman's life was, but there was something more ominous about how she said it. I need to get a drink. So that was chapter 2, and our first look at Summer. Bit of that was all exposition. I think that's gonna be a problem throughout the series. Is that there's so much telling and not enough like letting the story breathe, which is wild to say about a series that lasted I did this count a couple years ago, like 1.5 million words. But that just goes to show like how long RWBYond Home was in particular. Like RWBYond Home is the longest fic. It's 100 chapters and each one is like 5,000 words, whereas RWBYond Veil and RWBYond Generations are 130 chapters apiece, but they're only like 1 to 2,000 words per chapter, whereas like RWBYond Home, 100 chapters, but 5,000 each. But anyway, yeah, that was chapter 2. I am going to get a drink, and I'll be right back. We'll be right back. Trying to do at least like 12 chapters today. Trying to do like half of this whole story today, and then next week or week after, whenever I do another fanfiction stream, I can do this. Finish this, I mean. Alright. Any other messages? Nope. Alright. Chapter 3, Acacia Glen's Guardian of Peace. There should be a space in between that colon and that A. Patch may very well be the most beautiful place in Remnant this time of year. It certainly did wonders to ease Acacia's mind. This was her ancestral home, in more ways than one. There was nowhere else she would rather be, especially since her only alternative was to fight in a pointless war. Acacia had not been born on Patch. Rather, she was born in the shadow of Mountain Glen. When she was 5 years old, Mantle had attacked the valley. Acacia had been saved by a woman clad in an emerald cloak. Acacia never got her name, but she knew she had been a Knight of Vale. She had then moved to Patch to be with what remaining family she had. When she was 7, bit backstory. I'm not even sure if I hammered home this connection. This again, this fan fiction came out in 2016, early 2016. This is a 9-year-old fan fiction that I wrote. And I don't remember all the lore details, but from what I remember, what I think I was trying to imply is that Mountain Glen was named by the Glen's family. And the Glen's family are actually originally from Patch. And I do remember this, that each of the 4 maidens has like an island sanctuary that like worship them. And for the Spring Maiden in this, that island is Patch. And the Spring Maiden had stayed with the Glen's family for untold generations. And that the Glen's family is actually like cousins of the Rose family. Like distant cousins. And they kind of like trade off and on. It's a whole thing. Acacia had not been. Yeah, I already read that. When she was. Oh, and this person clad in an emerald cloak, that was the previous Spring Maiden. So Acacia was saved by the Spring Maiden. Spring Maiden died in that same battle. Acacia Glens becomes the new Spring Maiden. When she was 7, she met the Rose family. They were the police of Patch, guardians of the island. They made it safe, far safer than anywhere else in Vale's territories. No kingdom dared to attack the island so long as it was under their protection. When she was 12, tragedy struck. The Rose family were wiped out by some terrible monster. The only survivor was Raymond, her dearest friend. No relation to Raymond McNeil, by the way. I did not know Raymond back then. I think I was aware of him as Celtic Phoenix Productions. I didn't know that his name was Raymond until after I had already made this the name of Ruby's great-grandfather. The only survivor was Raymond, her dearest friend. He had been traumatized by the event. Acacia asked a lot of questions, but no one told her the answers. Eventually, Raymond told her that it was 2 monsters, and he would have died too if not for an emerald-clad knight. Acacia wondered if it was the same one that saved her. It was. So yeah, the emerald-clad knight died protecting Raymond instead of protecting Acacia. She survived protecting Acacia. Just days later, the wizard Ozpin came. He believed she was what he called a maiden. She studied under him for 5 years. She learned how to manifest her powers. She learned how to summon nature to her aid without the use of dust. The very earth seemed to answer her every whim, but then Acacia learned the truth. Ozpin had no plans on using this power to help people. He ignored the cries of the starving children and depressed-ridden populace. He wanted to use Acacia as a weapon for good, maybe, but a weapon for war. He wanted her to become the guardian of Vale. He introduced her to the other maidens, Amber, Helen, and Elsa. Were all just a few years older than her. Amber, Helen, and Elsa were all just a few years older than her. Helen was the daughter of a rich nobleman in Mistral. Amber, the daughter of a merchant in Vacuo, also was the daughter of the Duchess of Atlas, and they were all amazing. They each had powers not unlike her own, but things always changed. Amber left. She went back home tired of Ozpin's lies, or so she said. She went back home in the dead of night. After that, they all drifted apart. Helen went back to Mistral to be married off somewhere. Also went back to Atlas, but she at least stayed loyal to Ozpin. But when Acacia learned what Amber had learned, it made her sick to her stomach. So she, like Amber, left for home. At the age of 19, she moved back in with her grandmother and cousin on Patch. She met back up with Raymond and told him everything, just as he had told her all those years ago. He had become a striking young man. He single-handedly kept the island safe. But she could see it taking its toll. I put his instead of its. So she used her power and her gift for craftsmanship to ease his burden. She taught him all the things she had learned about dust, and he taught her how to fight monsters. They both became guardians of Patch, and with their combined power, no one dared to come to the island with ill intent. Acacia did give back to the world, though. With her, admittedly cheating, powers over life, she made Patch a prosperous hub of goods. She sold them for cheap all across the world. She also used her talents as a craftsman to make weapons. She hated the war, but she knew that if it carried on, something bigger would come, and all of Remnant would be safer if everyone had a weapon when that happened. And then one day, he came. Gardenia, be nice to our guest, she called to her cousin. He was 22 years old now. Gardenia is Granny Glynn's from the prior chapter. So this is a younger version of the woman who was like a grandmother to Summer. She was 22 years old now, and she wore an emerald cloak that matched her eyes and wore a yellow outfit under it. She brandished her battle axe over her hip. She stepped out into the foyer of the store and saw the General of Vale, Arthur Ark. Acacia Glynns, I presume, Arthur said, giving a polite bow. How can I help you? She asked, with a gentle smile on her face. I heard you are quite the craftsman. I need someone to help fix my sword and perhaps build a backup sword as well, Arthur said, presenting what's left of his sword. Acacia examined it, taking notes of the markings. Right this way, sir, she said, narrowing her eyes. He followed her into the shed. The walls were plastered with tools, weapons, and other trinkets. Acacia sat down at the workbench and started getting to work. So why are you really here? She inquired. I take it you know who I am, he said, having a seat across from her. More importantly, I know what you are. Not everyone has a sword like this, so I'll ask again. What's a high-ranking officer of the Villian military doing in my home? She said, anger apparent in her voice. I thought I made my position quite clear to the king. The king isn't who brought me here. Then who? She said, losing her patience. Then who? I don't remember any of the inflections here. It's been too long. The people are at war. The kingdoms only see each other as a threat. My sword is broken. I have a Deathstalker scar on my stomach. A Beowulf tried to ambush me on my way here. I have done all that is necessary to conceal my identity, and now I'm having a pleasant conversation with none other than the Spring Maiden. Her heart skipped a beat, and she flinched at those words. So, you know who I am? More importantly, I know what you are, he said, mirroring her earlier remark. That's something I really like doing still. Like, I was actually just editing a chapter in my upcoming book, The Golden Key, where 3 different characters say, funny you should mention that, as like a throw at each other. Like, funny you should mention that. Regarding very, very spoilery stuff. You abandoned your life of war in order to become a guardian for your people. As a guardian, you defend them from the grim and the war. You teach them how to defend themselves, giving them hope, confidence, and tranquility to live life without fearing tomorrow. He gave a sigh as he turned her attention to him, wondering where he was going with this. People like me, we only bring panic and ruin to those who we swore to protect. Our armies attract despair and hate, and those things bring the grim, which just bring more panic and fear in a vicious cycle. But I'm trying, Miss Glintz. I'm trying real hard to be the hero. Who sent you? The wizard. After my near-fatal battle with the Deathstalker, he opened my eyes to the truth beyond the truth. And now I know the only way to prevent I double typed there. The only way to prevent what's coming, to stop the extinction of the human race, I need a powerful ally, someone who can inspire hope, someone who can convince the kingdoms to recognize what's right in front of them. And I need a new sword. A sword that is tailor-made to fight grim. One that isn't made for taking a human life. Something handy, and something I can channel my aura through. I think you can fulfill both of these needs. No, in fact, it has to be you. Acacia listened intently. He seemed genuine enough, and if the wizard thought civilization was at risk to the point where such a famous general would be sent to give her this mission, very well. I will build you your sword and help you on this crusade, on two conditions. You name your sword, and you learn how to fight, and you learn how to really fight monsters. She said that last part with a coy smile. He wondered what she meant. She wrote down a name and address. You'll stay with this guy during your stay here on Patch. Tell him Acacia sent you to become a huntsman. Now, what do you have a name now? Now, what do you have a name for your sword, or do you want to come up with it later? Yeah, I would have reworded that whole sentence into like, now, do you have a name for your sword in mind, or do you want to come up with one later? He had a name in mind, his nickname among the enemy armies. He had a name in mind, his nickname among the enemy armies. Ugh, that's a tongue. Enemy armies. The name had brought so much fear to man. The name that had brought so much fear to man would be transformed, with the aid of this woman, into a name synonymous with hope. Hope that the grim threat will be dealt with in a blinding yellow light. Crocea Moors, and I accept both of your conditions. Crocea Moors, and I accept both your conditions. He walked out of the shack and headed towards the Rose House. There's a serious Mandela effect with me that happens with this, because I swore the Ruby Wiki spelt it Corsia Moors. And so I wrote that down in my notes. And then the notes were what I used to write, to keep track of how things were spelled. This also happens with the word faunus. I could have sworn that the wiki spelt it with an A at the end. A-S. That is wrong. Faunus is F-A-U-N-U-S, and Crocea Moors is C-R-O-C-E-A. So Crocea Moors and Faunus are spelt wrong damn near every time that they are in this book, this fanfiction. It's not a book, it's a fanfiction, which is a lot, because Crocea Moors is a very important sword. Not just because it happens to be Jean's weapon. Any chats? No? I got a couple viewers. Chapter 4, Crow and Raven, Bronwyns of a Feather. Crow Branwen was born into a family of prestige, but not necessarily capital. The Bronwyns had long been the Watchers of Vale. Some even say they were the first family of Vale. The basic sigil of the Branwen family certainly matched ancient sculptures and paintings from long before the Great War. But many believed that they were merely adopted, namely by Corvus Branwen, who traveled the world in an attempt to preserve art and culture in the last days of the Great War. And if not him, then the Bronwyns who preceded him. But Crow didn't care about any of that, not like his twin sister Raven did. She was born just a few minutes before him and has been all high and mighty ever since. That's something I nailed. The fact that Raven was born first. That is something that doesn't get revealed until Volume 5. And yeah, I nailed that. Something about the way she presents herself and the way that Crow talks about her is like, she's the older of the twins. You just get that vibe. She'd flick him on the head and call him an idiot every time he tried to be funny. Her only sense of humor to get other people Her only sense of humor was to get other people in high emotions, whether making them miserable or angry, usually just flustered. Like the time she told their father about a certain magazine he had hidden under his bed, or the time he had a crush on a girl and she told the whole world just to see his reaction. He'd get her back too, iced down her shirt, gum in her hair, got his nose broken for that on that one. Got his nose broken on that one, hitting her with a water balloon on a breezy day, throwing mud at her face, child's play really, but she never let it get to her. Wrong form of two, unless it was her hair that was messy, that he was messing with. Wet t-shirt, well, time to flaunt her stuff. Water balloon, challenge accepted. Ice down her shirt, ooh, what a fun game to play. Only she wasn't afraid to drop it down his pants. They fought and bickered all day long, and that's because they spent every day, all day, together. When they were little, their mother died. The doctor said it was pneumonia. Raven took it really hard. Crow took it well. He was a lot more visibly shaken. Raven wouldn't talk to anyone but Crow after that. Everyone else was just sarcasm, innuendos, or a cold shoulder. Crow talked to everyone. He wore his heart on his sleeve and rarely removed it. He didn't care what people thought. Neither did Raven. The difference was that Crow thought people could help. Their father, Craven, such a silly name, became more and more distant after their mother... Sorry, had to burp there. Became more and more distant after their mother's death. He stayed up in his study reading all day. Sometimes Raven would go up there and read too, but Crow preferred to look out into the sea at Raven's Peak. Named for the fact that from an angle the cliffside looked like a raven perched in the sea. Craven had also taken more trips to Mantle, and his friend Deacon Blackwater. More trips to Mantle and his friend Deacon Blackwater. Shouldn't be a comma there. Actually, they were rivals, and had been since their ancestors in the Great War. The Blackwaters had the largest library in the world as their home, and every time he came back, he would have a new gizmo, or a new medicine that he would give to Raven when she was sick. Raven seemed to get sick a lot, certainly more than Crow did, but Craven would always make it better. It was about all he was good for. Most of the time, Crow and Raven were home alone or with a maid, or for a brief time a butler. The castle was large and full of artwork and weapons, and mostly books. Some of the books were good, but some of them were lame. Raven said that most of something is probably crap, like most humans, she said. Like all Branwyns, or really most people these days, they went to combat school. Lighthouse Academy, thought, though not the first, that would be Signal on the island of Patch, was the largest preliminary combat school in Vale. Only Sanctum Academy and Mistral had a larger campus, and only Prometheus Academy and Mantle had a larger student body. Crow and Raven both wanted to be huntsmen. The profession was legendary. Top and even mid-tier huntsmen were awarded celebrity status. There was no shortage of work. It paid extremely well, and you could basically do whatever you want. You could go anywhere, and all the ladies loved a hero. That was Crow's ambition. Get strong, get famous, get rich, and get girls. But he knew Raven was different. Being a huntress meant relinquishing your citizenship. It meant being free to your own devices. You weren't assigned missions like a military, you chose them. That's what Raven wanted. That's what most people who became huntsmen wanted. Freedom. Freedom from government is what led to their creation at the end of the war. Raven wanted a simple weapon, something functional that can be used in most situations. So she went with a sword, and not wanting to be outdone by Crow, she made it almost as long as her body. And she made the sheath a rotating blade dispenser. It held dozens of blades, one for every conceivable situation. She really did want to rub it in his face how good with dust she was. Crow had a different mindset. Grimm were not a problem by themselves. Sure, there were powerful Grimm, but the majority of them wouldn't be able to beat a preteen brandishing a table leg in a one-on-one fight. So Crow designed his weapon for crowd control. Each form designed to be nigh impossible to dodge or block. A buster sword with a shotgun that turned into a scythe. And he was a natural with it. Of course he was. Weapons and engineering were two of his skills he was actually proud of. Were the only two skills he was actually proud of. Raven graduated top of the class from Lighthouse. Crow was third. The second place guy ended up being a pilot on an airship. So for all intents and purposes, Crow was the second best fighter and student coming out of Lighthouse that year. He and Raven were both accepted into Beacon and even personally welcomed by Headmaster Osmond, though it was possible he was just seeing Craven, which happened from time to time. As they looked from the airship to Beacon, Crow put his hand on Raven's shoulder. They made it. They were one step closer to their goal, to glory, to power, to knowledge, to freedom. That's a big thing with my version of Raven, is just like that. The power, knowledge, freedom, the ability to just pursue whatever it is your heart wants to pursue. So much so that, like, even Huntsman, even with all their freedoms, wasn't good enough for her, and that was a big reason why she leaves. No Bandit Raven, because pre-Volume 4. And I also want to kind of build this parallel between, like, Raven and both Yang and Blake. That, like, Yang wants to be swept up in all these adventures and just have fun fighting and just pursuing answers to her past, and that's also what Raven wants. And so, like, Yang and her hatred of Raven ends up becoming more and more like Raven throughout the story. Now we're on to Chapter 5. Argentware. Or Chapter 5, Raymond Rose, the last of the Argentware. That's a fucking lie. Levi's here, Livy being like, am I a joke to you? And I knew that was a lie, because I already had plans for Levi way before I started actually writing this. I've said this in author's notes and in videos talking about RWBYond in the past. The original idea for RWBYond was to just be like, pick up right where Volume 3 left off, take it to its natural conclusion of beating Salem, and then skip ahead 5 years and have a new villain who's gunning for Ruby. And then have that be like the finale. It spun out into something way more big and complicated than that. But that was the gist of it. So like I already had plans for a character named Levi who is going to be an evil silver-eyed warrior. Uh, Argentware. What did that term even mean? Raymond knew where it came from, but he didn't when he was a child. He was so young when it happened. His entire family murdered, all because he trusted a talking shadow. But the shadow was sealed in the necropolis now. So now Raymond was just a huntsman on patch. He did his own thing, taking very enthusiastic walks. That's a Helsing Bridge reference. Fighting monsters, having picnics at least twice a week with Acacia, sometimes sparring with her. Hell, he had gotten his huntsman thing down to a science. He could write the book on hunting monsters. Too bad every other able-bodied man and woman were so preoccupied with the war. The idiots. And for that matter, screw Ozpin. Several times the wizard had tried to get him to fight, but he had no desire to fight the finite might of men. The Grimm were a permanent threat, one that, if not kept in check, would run rampant throughout the entire kingdom. Apparently, the old fool took the hint because he hadn't been back since Acacia left his little magic club. And then one day, Raymond had a knock on his door. So a bit of my characterization of Ozpin here, and I put a lot of thought into this. He and Salem are not opposites; they're a horseshoe. Uh, they both basically want to rule the world. Ozpin wants to rule it by kind of like forming the shadow government. Placing these leaders in these very strategic positions across the world, and then just serving in an advisory role. Like, he doesn't want to like make them do things. He just wants to heavily encourage them to do things, and that's a explanation for in Volume 3 where he's kind of like manipulating Pyrrha into becoming the new Fall Maiden. And he's like, I need to hear you say it. I need to hear you consent. Because otherwise he'd feel super guilty and torn up about it. Whereas Salem wouldn't ask for consent. She believes that she needs to rule the world because she's the only one who's worthy. Neither Salem nor Ozpin have true dominion over the Grimm. I do explain this in RWBYond that like the ability to control Grimm is a trick that Salem has only just recently picked up by the time the series starts. In that she is actually like just channeling the power of the true Grimm King, who is someone who is even more powerful and dangerous than she is. Like the true big immortal bad guy is the Grimm King, who is a completely separate entity from Salem. Salem is immortal to a point. She's eternally youthful and can like reincarnate. Same with Ozpin. It works a little bit differently in both of their cases, but they're at the end of the day, like Salem and Ozpin are willing to work together if it means to defeat the Grimm King. And that's a big thing in this book, because something I remember about the Old Huntsmen stuff is that I made it to where Salem was the Queen of Vacuo during the Great War. And it's only thanks to her that the Great War ended the way it did. So that was a detail I put in the little spoiler for the end of this story, but I do remember that being a thing, and I remember being very pleased with myself when I came up with the idea of Salem being the Queen of Vacuo. Can I help you? Raymond said. The man looked puzzled at his appearance. So a green jumpsuit and a red scarf weren't exactly intimidating, especially to Raymond's silver-eyed ginger face. Yes, I'm looking for Raymond. Do you know him? The man looked military, but was dressed in the garbs of a peasant. Well, of course I know him. He's me. Ha ha! Star Wars reference! Raymond said, crossing his arms. Acacia sent me. I want to learn how to best to fight monsters. She said you could help. Acacia sent you to the right place. You're looking at the premier huntsman in all of Remnant, Raymond said with pride, gesturing for Arthur to come in. Really? Arthur said doubtingly as he took a seat. Well, as one of only two people to claim that title, and the only one to do so, and the only man to do so, I'd say the cards are in my favor. That's funny. Man, I used to be funny. What happened? Yeah. Of course I'm the greatest huntsman alive. I'm the only huntsman alive. There's only two hunters, and one of them is a girl. So she's not a huntsman, she's a huntress. She's the greatest huntress, I'm the greatest huntsman. What are you gonna do about it? Uh yeah, more like you're playing with a stacked deck. Who's the other? Acacia, obviously. I taught her everything I know. And who taught you? My parents a little. They died when I was little. After that, I guess I'm self taught. I studied the Grimm and the legends that surround them for 8 years, and my methods have been effective so far. Patch hasn't had a Grimm crisis in over 6 years. Just how old are you? 20. I was 14 last time Grimm actually attacked the village. Acacia has been a big help these last few years. Speaking of which, where are my manners? Can I get you anything to drink? Water, please. So what's your name, soldier? Arthur Ark. Raymond Rose, he said with a shake of hands. How could you tell I was a soldier? Man your age coming to Patch to learn to fight Grimm, surely you must be a soldier. And that name, Ark, I've heard it before. You are the war hero who's kept Vale afloat. I'm no hero. A hero saves people because it's the right thing to do. I fight because it's the only thing I know how to do. Besides, I didn't come here just to learn how to fight Grimm. I came here to help get Acacia's help on a mission. This was one of the conditions, and I become a huntsman certified by you. So, you have seen what's happening. You know, deceit doesn't help in the fight against Grimm. That's what separates hunters from soldiers. Acacia and I tell each other everything. I know what she is, but more importantly, I know who she is. See, that's a flip on what was happening with the previous Arthur chapter. Like, oh, I know who you are. More importantly, I know what you are. Whereas Raymond is like, I know what she is, but more importantly, I know who she is. And I've seen the things she can do. So will you help me? Yes, of course. Luckily, you know how to use a weapon, so the hard part is done. Where is your weapon? Currently in Acacia's shop. Don't worry, you can use one of mine. Raymond got his sword and handed one to Arthur as they prepped for a spar. You have fought plenty of people before, so come at me and I'll teach you the difference in fighting beasts. Okay, I'm just looking at this paragraph and I can already tell another problem I have with this, which is nowadays I would literally chunk this out. I would chunk this out and have each line of dialogue be its own line, and then the descriptions happen in between, instead of making it just one big blob. Arthur attacked him, but instead of blocking and letting his aura do the work, Raymond dodged. Grimm don't have aura, for they lack a soul. Instead, they rely on their hides, dense muscle, and thick bones. The older or larger a Grimm, the stronger they are. You can take blows with your aura, but that should only be used to help human error from being the death of you. Raymond countered and struck Arthur on the side. Grimm do not hesitate. They don't get exhausted. As you know, a soldier, even a highly trained one, can only go strong for a few minutes. A Grimm will go until it's dead. Arthur connected a blow to Raymond's leg, but he dashed away, in a flurry of red and green petals to recover. The trick is to not get overwhelmed. Keep the Grimm in front of you. Don't be afraid to fall back to a more defensive strategy if your aura has taken a hit. Raymond then dashed around and with blinding speed, sending Arthur flying when the blow was blocked. Raymond kept going and hit Arthur from behind, knocking him down. Raymond pointed his sword at Arthur's face. Lastly, if the Grimm is bigger than you, stay away from its mouth. All the aura in the world won't help you get out of a Grimm's stomach. Raymond holstered his sword. That was actually my excuse to not have Roman Torchwick come back. I'm not done yet, Arthur said. I am. I don't have as much stamina as Acacia, and it appears your aura rivals even hers. I'm just a mere mortal Training someone that, under the right circumstances, can take an entire army, he said with a shrug. We'll go on an actual hunt with Acacia tomorrow morning. So yeah, like there's so many like different strategies you can use to like play around with people's heads and hitting their weak points and using their body against them and weight distribution and balance and all that stuff. None of that stuff works on a Grim. Grim are not all Grim are mindless, which is a line Oobleck says in Volume 2. And it's important to like understand that pound for pound, even the weakest Grim is going to be stronger than a human, even a trained human. Like it takes an immense, like they just are physically superior. That's the point I was trying to get across there. This isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of typos and stuff, but and overly, expository. Chapter 6, Tying Xiaolong, Just a Boy from Torch. Tying Xiaolong, self-proclaimed Dragon of Torch, was on Cloud 9 when he first arrived at Beacon. Tai had what he would consider a pretty normal life. He had two pretty cool parents. His father was a cop and let him get away with just enough to make Tai have fun without ruining his life. And that was him in a nutshell. He liked causing trouble, but he liked to think he knew when to call it quits. He was a teenager when he decided to be a huntsman. By that point, he was the best fighter in Torch Academy. He knew several huntsmen had come from his family, but it wasn't an assured thing. Plenty of Longs had passed up their chance at being heroes in favor of a simpler life. But Tai didn't want simple. He wanted to be the very best that no one ever was. To fight them is my real test. To train them is my cause. Pokemon reference. And to do that, he had to train with the best and fight with the best. That meant joining Beacon Academy and becoming a huntsman. Sorry, my nose is just really itchy today. As the top fighter in his class, he passed with flying colors, even if his other subjects were a bit lacking. Yeah, lacking was putting it nicely. Not to say he flunked out. He had never gotten enough in his life, but he was firing off more C's than a coffee shop. Whatever that means. See, I used to be funny. I just read that metaphor like, what the fuck does that mean? And then literally, next line is, whatever that means. A terminally average student is what his English teacher said, and English was his best subject of the 4 cores. But he was competent enough in math, decent in history, science he wasn't so good at, but he was still getting passing grades. He got straight A's in gem and shop class. His weapon got one of the best scores in the class. That was something, right? But those weren't the kinds of grades that got you into Beacon. There were almost 30 combat schools all over the world, and only 4 Huntsman academies. Only 16 to 32 people would be accepted into each. Everyone else would just have to settle for local militias or police work, or become a farmer or something. Or become a farmer or something is a line taken from Jean in Volume 1, like, I could always be a farmer or something, But he made it. He got transcripts approved, he passed a rigorous combat exam, impressed the professors, and he hopped on the spell hopped wrong. Hopped on the airship to Beacon. After listening, or rather pretending to listen to Headmaster Osmond's coronation speech, he set up his pillow and blanket in the ballroom. What a score to have men and women all sleeping in the same room. Not that he would try anything in these circumstances, but he was a skilled window shopper to be sure. There were a few that caught his eye, and when he took off his shirt, he caught some of their eyes too. Yep, years of working out and training helped sculpt the perfect body, and he was turning a lot more heads without hamming it up than some people. Especially this one nerd with red eyes that tried chatting some blonde up only to be smacked in the face. Uh, Crow guy failure. Some guy went to the smoking hot girl with dark hair. Same guy went to the smoking hot girl with dark hair. They looked to be related. They both had red eyes. Ty wasn't sure if he found that attractive, but it was definitely memorable. Ty didn't bother socializing. He had 4 entire years to make conversation with his classmates. He just made a mental note of some girls who seemed interested. The next day was initiation, which only involved being launched into the Emerald Forest and forced to find a partner. After knocking down some trees for his landing strategy, he made a beeline for what he hoped was the Forest Temple. Along the way, he blasted some Grim away with his gauntlets. Hold on. Sorry about that. I need to check this. Where was I? Our forest was so well made. The next day was initiation, which involved being launched to the Emerald Forest and forced to find a partner. After knocking down some trees for his landing strategy, he made a beeline for what he hoped was the Forest Temple. Along the way, he blasted some Grim with his gauntlets. Emerald Forest was so well maintained and so widely used by Beacon students that all the Grim couldn't be more than a few months old. He got to a clearing and ran into the girl from before, the one with red eyes. He introduced himself and she said her name was Raven. She seemed pleasant enough. Or maybe Ty was just swooning over her body. Hmm? Sorry about that. There's someone looking for something. He got to a clearing. Okay, yada yada yada. Distracting body, or maybe Ty was just swooning over her body. Something. Sometimes it's hard for him to tell if someone is actually being nice or polite, especially with a distracting body like that. They ended up making it to the Forest Temple. Raven had somehow already found it and was just looking for a partner so that she could leave. Ty respected that. No need to do anything they didn't have to. As they approached the temple, they found 2 more people fighting a griffin close to the cliff. The Grim was keeping them from being able to climb the cliff. The 2 others were Raven's brother Crow and a white hooded girl named Summer. She had silver eyes because, Ty had to be the only one with normal eye color in his group. Summer came up with a strategy to distract the griffin and aim for its wings with her rifle. Then Crow could fly above it because that was apparently a semblance and smash down on it. First mention of Crow's semblance, yes, I had the whole turning into birds thing be Raven and Crow's semblance, and then Raven's portals are actually a device she has. It's actually a really big important plot point. That technology is just kind of floating around, or it's actually kind of arcane magic type stuff. He pinned the griffin to the ground while Ty and Raven sliced and punched it at close range. This griffin was tough, probably older than most Grimm here, but Summer managed to pull him out before he could get swatted by the monster's claws. Raven and Crow worked together to slice open its stomach, while Summer smashed into it with her halberd and decapitated it. And as she did so, white rose petals drifted in the wind. After making it to the cliffside, they continued talking all the way back to Beacon. Osmond held a welcome ceremony in the auditorium. Both groups had collected the white bird relics, and they were christened Team Stark, led by Summer Rose, the admittedly cute silver-eyed girl that had probably saved his life. He was fine with that. Chapter 7. The Beacon of Hope. Arthur had stayed on Patch for nearly a year. He learned what felt like everything he ever needed to know about the Grimm. And with this knowledge, the future enemies made much more sense, and it improved Arthur's hope for said future. If a ragtag group of hunters had been the bane of the Grimm, then the mere act of uniting Remnant's mightiest heroes would surely spell certain victory. But first they had to report to Vale. Vale had long been a beacon of hope in times of darkness. At least that's what legends say. Apparently, Vale had actually begun gaining ground again. The purely defensive strategy was working much better than any offensive strategy that had been attempted in Arthur's lifetime, and a more direct intervention by Osmond kept the Mistral Marauders at bay. One year as it has been since we last met, he said. The king is none too pleased with your absence, but we have been gaining ground against Mistral thanks to Osmond's direct intervention. And you, he bowed to Acacia, it has been far too long since last we talked. Stop the groveling, Acacia said. If you sank any lower, you'd wake the dead. If you'd sink any lower, you'd wake the dead. Raymond laughed at the comment. And who are you? Corvus said, looking Raymond over. Yeah, I don't know who's bowing there. And who are you? Corvus said, looking Raymond over. He looked shocked. He looked shocked and then turned to Acacia. A resident of Patch and a dear friend, Acacia said, getting between Raymond and Corvus. He helped me get established in Patch's defenses. Anyway, if you follow me, the king has some words for you, Corvus said. I'm afraid I'll have to decline, Acacia said. If I ever see that deranged brute again, I will surely bite him. But you must. No, I must get something to eat. I must take a shower. I must undo the mess that kings and queens have caused, she said. There was clearly no reasoning with her. Come on, Raymond. Actually, I wanted to meet the king. Besides, what Arthur is about to propose is risky. He may need some help. What would you be planning? Or what would he be planning? You'll see, Corvus, Arthur answered. I hope that you'll actually join me, he said, batting Corvus on the shoulder. Afterwards, Arthur talked to the king. He wasn't pleased with Acacia's absence or Raymond's presence, but Arthur stuck to his guns. He announced that he wished to get a coalition of the greatest warriors in Remnant in order to stop the threat of the Grimm. They are mankind's greatest common threat, and the men Arthur has chosen would be fools for ignoring it. He went so far to renounce his knighthood and his citizenship and ask for like-minded folks to do the same. Only by renouncing the bonds of government can people become heroes for all of Remnant. He used Acacia and Raymond as proof. They were adored on Patch and respected by all nations for the work they do in fighting the Grimm. Arthur called for the establishment of schools to train people to fight Grimm. When asked where the school would be, he answered that each kingdom would have one, and Vale's should be in the old castle resting on the cliff at the far end of Vale Bay. It is large enough for all the facilities they would need, and Ozpin was already using it as his base of operations. The king scoffed all this was too expensive and difficult with the war. That's why Arthur needed all the kingdoms to unite under one ideology for the common good of all men. So, a bit of lore about Beacon Academy. Beacon Academy used to be Vale Castle. It was abandoned, and then Ozpin moved in and started using it as his base of operations, even before the end of the Great War. That's why Arthur needed kingdoms, blah, blah, blah. When asked what this ideology would be, it was Raymond that answered. Heroes, legends scattered through time. Everyone is raised on the accounts of heroes and their journeys. The kingdoms will remain separate, their territory maintained, but with a common enemy like the Grimm, they can finally stop fighting. Businesses that profit from war will still do so, only the war will be against the Grimm. Ozpin agreed with the sentiment and asked to see to this matter personally. So the group reconvened in Ozpin's personal throne atop Beacon Tower. Nobody knows when the tower was built, or what it was originally, or why it was originally abandoned. It predated Vale, though. The city was founded on the coast like any major city, and when it was established, the Emerald Tower as it had been called, was already there. In Arthur's youth, it was known as a gathering place for Grimm, but it had since become the base for Ozpin and the military force he commanded. So, General, what is your first move? Ozpin asked. That should be a question. There are two men whose abilities are matched only by the persuasion they have over their kingdoms. I need to speak with Orion, Nikos, and Mistral. I trust him, and I know he shares my concerns. He is powerful, but more importantly, reasonable, Arthur answered. That's going to be difficult. Mistral is suffering right now, and we're the ones who caused it, Corvus said. But I didn't. Nikos is an ally, as far as I'm concerned. He's also been put as the bodyguard to Helen Troy. The Queen of Mistral? Arthur responded. The Fall Maiden, Acacia said. Arthur was shocked at the revelation. What happened? She asked. After you left, she gave up any hope of peace. Wrong form of peace. Ozpin answered. She took her rightful place as Queen of Mistral after her father died. Without you or Amber, there was no reasoning with her. Now Elsa is our only ally in a different kingdom, and she's betrothed to Lord Schnee. That's unfortunate, she said. I do like what you've done with the place, though. I'm here for nostalgia, perhaps, Ozpin said. Perhaps I was tired of pushing away allies and wanted to give someone else a chance. He looked at Raymond. You are an Argentware. We met not too long ago. So, have you realized the legend? My father would never shut up about it, but I'm afraid they're just stories. Perhaps my ancestors were the first to unlock Aura or successfully fight the Grimm, or some other great feat that started the legend. But I've fought Grimm my whole life. I'm quite skilled at it. But I've never frozen a Grimm, or made them cower in fear. That part of the legend isn't true. Perhaps you just haven't had the right motivator, Ozpin suggested. Stop, Acacia shouted. Raymond doesn't need any godly powers to fight the Grimm. He doesn't have them. Stop trying to make him into a weapon. Acacia, I'm not. But you always do. I respect what you do and all the good it does, but Raymond is not a warrior. He is a huntsman. The first of his kind, and the best if I do say so myself. So there will not be any talk about your greater good or personal vendetta. We have real issues here, and as far as any of your friends were able to find out, it has nothing to do with Salem. We have real issues here, and as far as any of your friends were able to find out, it has nothing to do with Salem. Who's Salem? Raymond asked. Ozpin's opposite, Corvus answered. And his scapegoat, Acacia added. I was 12 years old when you found me and started filling my head with all these stories and getting me ready for a war when war was already here. Is this Salem what's coming? Arthur asked. Tell him the truth, wizard, Acacia said. No, but she might use it as an opportunity to stow it, old man, Acacia said. All the time I spent on Patchen, not one person who had even heard of Salem showed up. How do we even know she's alive? She is, and she's dangerous. You are paranoid, and we need to focus on the Grim before whatever's coming comes. We need General Nikos, but he fears Mordred, Arthur interrupted. If we can get his trust, we can actually stand a chance at uniting the armies. We will go to Vacuo and plead our case to Mordred. Then I will head to Misrule alone and meet with Nikos. From there, we will set up a meeting of minds to figure things out. I will go to Mantle and speak with our allies there, Osmond said. Corvus, you go with them. You know Vacuo better than anyone here. And so, with a plan in mind, they parted ways. They headed for the Horizon Mountains and to the desert beyond, the most dangerous place for a Valyrian to possibly be. So, yeah, that was chapter 7. Lot plot progression there. A lot of more characterization for Osmond, and I really. Is it full of myself to say that I like what I did 10 years ago with some of these ideas? The whole idea is that, Osmond was a king of Vale at some, nondescript point in time. And this was his original castle. He's saying, he's nostalgic for it. How long have I been going? Hour 43, that's not bad. Chapter 8, Stark, the coolest team ever. Summer perhaps made a mistake of not laying down the law. She had been so glad to be on such a promising team and leading them nonetheless, that she may have let them get away with way too much. It didn't take long for the dynamic to set in. Crow and Raven were twins. They knew each other better than anyone ever would, and Ty was pretty much a typical jock. A jock whose were act of smiling. Oh. A jock whose mere act of smiling caused Summer's cheeks to go a deep shade of red. That might make things harder, but at least Raven wasn't having any of Ty's foolery. Sorry, I am falling apart here. And I got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I got 5 more chapters I'm trying to read tonight. Ah. They had most of their classes together. Summer excelled at all the science courses. Raven was the star student of all the practical courses like Dust 101 and Intro to Aura Implementation. Crow was actually really good at math. Both Bronwyn seemed to sleepwalk through history with nothing but A's. Ty was decent in the literary class, but it seemed to set in that none of them, save for Summer, enjoyed the basic classes all students had. The practical classes were much better. Taiyang, the brave fool, had paraded himself the first day of combat class. He claimed to be the best fighter in the freshman class. Raven challenged him and beat him. The two began resenting each other after that. Summer always wanted to stop them, but Crow said it was better to just let Raven vent when she wanted to. Taiyang would had beaten nearly every other opponent that came his way, but unless the person was also a hand-to-hand specialist, he often only won by the narrowest of margins. Crow's weapon wowed audiences, if nothing else, but it turns out that a scythe isn't the best weapon for fighting people. At least the sword mode was better, but the whole thing was too cumbersome to keep Crow in the top 5 ranking. Even though it hurt his pride, he knew he didn't design his weapon for such fights. Raven, on the other hand, was unstoppable. From day one, she rested at the top of the leaderboard. Ty had even said, "It's like her bird nest or something," to which Raven booed. Crow snickered, and Summer giggled. That is kind of funny. No, top of the leaderboard. That's like her bird nest. Summer, on the other hand, was well above average. She coasted in the top 5, usually at number 3 or 4, never dropped below 5. Her weapon was simple and effective. Okay, so maybe not that simple. A halberd axe beam rifle with a chain and flail. Maybe it was just in comparison of Raven's rotating blade or the monstrosity Crow slung around. Her real strength was her speed. The only one who could consistently keep up with her was Raven, and even then it was only in reflexes and not in mobility. Ty didn't give up, though. Every time Summer would implement one of the exercises she was taught in her strategy and tactics or team exercise, both leader-only classes, Ty would use Raven as his sparring partner, much to Summer's dismay, but that left her with Crow. Summer wasn't an idiot. She knew the dark-headed boy had a crush on her. Summer would oblige him in her own way, but she wasn't really looking for a relationship. Sure, she had a bit of a crush on Ty, but it was a purely physical attraction. Not that she didn't love his personality, it just wasn't enough for Summer to change her mind and try dating, especially since, through all their battles, it was obvious where his attention was. So yeah, Crow likes Summer, Summer likes Ty, Ty likes Raven, Raven likes nobody. And nobody likes Crow. It's a full circle with the empty space for nobody. Crow would always sit across from her and she would stay polite. There should be more words there. Sometimes he would ask her for coffee. What girl in their right mind would turn down free coffee? He would even go through her leadership stuff with her. He wanted to be the best teammate ever, and that meant helping his leader become a stronger one. But even Raven had helped her with that. Summer found out why one day. Raven thought that she should have been leader. She thought Summer was too lax and too nice to handle that level of responsibility. Raven didn't say it angrily, but she still said it in a very snobby and condescending way. All of a sudden, it made sense why Raven never listened to her and why she, and usually Ty, had their own workout schedule. Summer snapped after that. She firmly and calmly told Raven to stop being such a spoiled brat, that she was trying her best, which was really hard, and that all Raven had done in the last month and a half, typo there, is be a stuck-up little brat who thinks she's too good for everyone. And she ended with that won't be tolerated anymore. I should have had quotation marks there. Crow tried diffusing the situation and Ty just sat back and started popping popcorn. Raven rose to Summer's challenge with a game. Not a standard sparring match in a dull arena, but with a fight in the courtyard where everyone could see. The combat instructor, Professor Phillip, tried stopping it, but Ozpin let it slide, so long as they didn't destroy the courtyard. Summer had unleashed a fury, the likes of which she never knew. Raven used dust in the environment to her advantage, but Summer thrived in the more open airspace. The battle had been brief. Neither of them had the aura reserves to take more than a few hits, But Raven won, but not until after being knocked on her butt and nearly losing. But Summer hesitated, thinking Summer's aura had already been in the red from that blow. After that, Raven opened up more to Summer. They went on a girls' night out. They talked about their past, and they found a kindred spirit with each other, having both lost their mothers. After that, Summer took a mother hen approach. She cooked, cleaned, and doled out discipline however she saw fit. Raven despised this approach, which made Summer enjoy it even more. Crow seemed fine with it, but he'd probably jump off a cliff if Summer told him to. His infatuation was only growing by the day. Ty, on the other hand, was neutral and appreciative. Granny Glenn's always did say the fastest way to anyone's heart was their stomach. So yeah, that was all telling. No real showing. That was just exposition. Rickstar said, I'm here now. Is it almost over? I'm about 2/3 of the way through the batch of chapters I'm going to read tonight. Makes sense. Crow like Summer. Crows are attracted to shiny things. Silver. Oh my. Oh, I didn't even put that together. Crows are attracted to shiny things. Yep. They are. But no, there's something like there's man, especially like post Volume 9 though, like there's some dommy mommy aspects to Summer's personality, I swear. That was always kind of like the theory, like the whole meme was like entire team Ty and then the entire team yada yada whatever. But like real talk, Summer Summer absolutely tapped Raven. Like I just the way she talks to Raven in Volume 9 is just like Raven didn't just abandon Tai and Yang. She also abandoned Summer, and Summer's pissed about that. Like they have like jilted X chemistry in that one scene. Uh it just makes sense. Like the whole point I try to make in this is that like Summer is very much like Ruby, but a Ruby that held herself back, and died for it. There's a lot of like pent up and unrequited feelings in the whole like Team Stark stuff. It's funny because I think if I remember correctly, both Raven and Crow become headmasters later on, and neither of them are leaders, but they both like picked up a lot from Summer. But yeah. Alright, Chapter 9. The Vacuo Raiders. Raymond had never been this far away from home. He and his companions were on the edge of Vale. The mountain pass had a reputation for being the site of numerous battles between Vale and Vacuo. Raymond couldn't help but notice Arthur's nervousness as they made their way through the mountain pass. I would have thought that a place that held so many battles would have more to show for it, Raymond said. Vacuo has a policy to not let anything go to waste. In ancient Vacuan society, waste was a crime punishable by death, Corvus added. From this point on, we are invaders of Vacuo, Arthur stated. Proceed with caution. Noses. I do a lot with Vacuo throughout the story, throughout the series. They marched up the mountain pass and crossed into the desert. Everything was quiet, deathly quiet. The wind was blowing gently on Raymond's red scarf. He looked down and saw a shadow. The shadow was getting bigger by the second until he realized what it was. He barely dodged the boulder in time and grabbed his sword. "It's Mordred," Arthur called out. A massive gust of wind blew sand into Raymond's eyes. Raymond grabbed Acacia's hand as she tried using her maiden powers. Acacia was struck and grunted in pain, and Raymond felt a boot hit his chest. He was carried away, but it didn't seem like it was from the force of the kick. No, it was something else. "His semblance is gravity," Raymond said as he stabbed a rock to stop his fall. "I know," Arthur was cut off by a choking cry. "General Arc," a low voice said. The sand cleared, and a large man in purple and red, with long black hair, was holding Arthur up with one hand. "I gave you a warning to never cross my path again." "We came here in peace," Arthur said. "We have a message for you," Corvus said. "What would a team of Valyrians need to say to me?" Mordred inquired. Acacia smacked into him with all her might, freeing Arthur. "My name is Acacia Glynns, Maiden of Spring. I have asked Arthur to help escort me into an audience with you." "Glynns?" Mordred said. "I heard you retired." "Only from fighting my fellow man." "Then what Thurston said is true." "Thurston? You know General Thurston?" Arthur said. "Like, no shit." That's a stupid line. Like, they're literally two of the leaders of Vacuo. Of course they know each other. "Thurston is a savior of Vacuo. It is my business to make ally with those who share my beliefs," Mordred stated. "Thurston, you are right. It seems that Vale really has figured it out." "What?" Raymond said. Ozpin predicted this would happen, Corvus said. "He's not the only one who knows what's going on." "I was counting on it," Arthur said with a smile. "I knew you were a smart man. If I figured out the true cost of war, I knew you would too." Flattery will only get you so far, a youthful voice said. Raymond turned around and saw a young woman with bronze skin and brown braided hair. She wore the mask of a Nemean. "Grim mask," Raymond said. "Who are you?" Arthur said. "I am Thurston," the masked woman said. "General Thurston is a woman?" Arthur said. Acacia pushed him aside and stood face to face with Thurston. "You can change your clothes," Acacia said. "Change your hairstyle. Wear a mask and even change your name. But I can see it in your eyes. So tell me why you made me think you were gone forever, Amber." "Amber," Raymond said. "Your friend? The Summer Maiden?" Corvus said. "Just when everything descends into madness, you find a little bit of sense yet. I didn't change my name not to hide anyway." Thurston held up her hand to show a wedding ring. "I didn't change my name, not to hide anyway." Thurston held up her hand to show a wedding band. "I got married to an engineer named Renton Thurston. Together we joined a group of like-minded individuals. I've been defending my home ever since. And together we have been uniting the Vacuo Raiders to protect against the Grim. The ones you have undoubtedly united against." Ugh, such a clunky sentence. And such a clunky person reading it. So yeah, Amber Thurston, Summer Maiden. "I got married to an engineer named Renton Thurston." Renton is that's an Eureka 7 reference. Together we joined a group of like-minded individuals. I've been defending my home ever since, and together we have been uniting the Vacuo Raiders to protect against the Grim. The same ones you have undoubtedly united against, Mordred added. Acacia, I'm sorry, but I couldn't be a pawn in Ozpin's schemes anymore. Not after Helen left. Not after you lost all hope. Hope that is lost is found again, Acacia brushed up against Raymond's hand, causing the taller man to blush. This is Raymond Rose, a dear friend who gave me hope and purpose during my exile on Patch. We no longer follow the government, Arthur said. The kings are corrupt and arrogant. In order to save the world from what's coming, we need to unite under an ideal, Arthur said. Vacuo has no king. Only those strong enough to survive. Vacuo has no king, Mordred said. Only those strong enough to survive. We will help you, and with us all the raiders of Vacuo will stand. There is still the matter of Atlas, Corvus said. I will have... There's still the matter of Atlas, Corvus said. I will head over there in the morning and speak with some people I trust to be on our side. I will speak to Mistral and... I will head to Mistral and speak with General Nikos, Arthur said. I would like it if one of you maidens joined me. We both will, Thurston said. I'm the only one that can get through to Helen. A corrupt maiden as queen, Mordred said. I don't like it. We may not have a choice, Thurston said. The one who told me these things said... The one who told me these things says he has a contact in Mistral we might try. By day he goes by Phil Trident, but by night he goes by Kraken, just as I go by Nemean, and my dear husband goes by Taijitu. Grim, Corvus said. Yes, it's a gimmick within the organization. Who is your boss? That isn't my secret to tell. Our first look at the Arbiters of Truth. A group of people who wear grim masks, because that was... It's the organization that Raven joins later on, under the code name Nevermore. So Summer banged her whole team. Raven banged Ty and Summer, Ty banged Summer and Raven, and Crow took a cold shower. Yes. Real talk, I used to really believe in the theory that Crow was Ruby's dad. I still low-key ship him with Summer. There's so much you can do with that. I like the idea that Crow has unrequited feelings for Summer. That, like, he never got with her. Like a very, like, a healthier version of Snape and my Harry Potter knowledge is so lacking. Harry's mom, like how Snape was in love with Harry's mom, and then that's why he like kind of like is rude but also sticks his neck out for Harry Potter. Like that's like a healthier version of that dynamic is kind of what I like doing with Crow and Ruby. Snape and Lily. Thank you, Rick's Arts. But yeah, we'll get more of that later. Chapter 10, Stark vs. Black. The Vital Festival had begun. The parade and the dance weren't anything to note, except Crow did have a dance with Summer. But so did Ty and Raven. Yep, Summer bagged the entire team. They all danced with everyone, but that's not what he was looking forward to. Crow was ready to fight. Amity was crowded and cheering primarily for the home team. Raven kept chastising him to not let it get to his head. But how could he not? Especially since his team rocked, at least in fighting, and they were going to put a beat down on the Blackwaters. Team Black of Atlas were a fan favorite from Atlas, but to their rotten luck, they were put against the coolest team in Beacon. Crow looked around at his team. Ty was waving to the audience and winking over at the group of fangirls that were holding up signs with his picture. Raven shot dirty looks at the crowd of boys doing the same for her, and Summer was smiling and waving at the other team. Best of luck, Summer told them. May the best team win. I just want to get this over with, their leader said. Barry Musgrave was has pale green eyes and purple hair. She wore a simple gray suit with a black tie and held a cane in her hand. I don't think I can do it, Barry, Chrome said. Chrome Blackwater was the youngest person to be accepted into Atlas. He had silver hair and black eyes, and wore a black sweater and sweatpants. Those girls are so pretty, I don't know how to deal with it, you know? Chrome Blackwater is based on Krona from Soul Eater, and I basically made them like a negative version of Summer. Like, he's a negative version of Summer. Like, instead of silver eyes and dark hair, he has dark eyes and silver hair. Well, then deal with Crow and leave Raven to me, Lunaria said. She wore a Victorian-style waistcoat and trench coat. They have Victorian-style and Remnant? And wore long black leggings leading to her boots. Her long black hair was in a bun, poking out from her little hat and falling over her thin glasses. Crow had dealt with Lunaria Blackwater more times than he cared to. This was the perfect time to exercise a little pent-up family rivalry. It was no secret that the Bronwyns and Blackwaters have hated each other for a long time now, and the fact that the whole generation's worth of team of them were on and the fact that the whole generation's worth of them were on the stadium, well, that was too perfect. That should be, and instead of on, there should be an apostrophe S there, and whatever. I guess I'll get the one with the fangirls then. Animal Kane said. Animal had a wild said of brownish blonde hair. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. Mane? Wild, I don't know how I misspelled Mane as said. Of brownish blonde hair and wore a simple blue sweater with a black collar. A far cry from his sharply dressed teammates. Don't be scared, Chrome, Summer said. This is just a friendly competition. Summer, stop fraternizing with the enemy, Raven said. I'm trying to be nice. Final is supposed to be about peace, not war. 3, 2, 1, begin! Lunaria jumped forward towards Raven, but Crow intercepted her in mid-air as Raven took a swing at Chrome. Chrome pulled out a short, double-edged sword and blocked it. I don't want to fight you. I don't know how to deal with it, you know? That makes two of us, Crow called out, earning a snarl from Raven. Animal's arms doubled in size as he engaged in a fist fight with Ty. Lunaria wielded a giant cleaver in her hand, and the two engaged in a bladed fight. I've waited for this for a long time, Lunaria taunted. Me too, Crow said, pushing forward. Barry was fighting Summer, his cane turned into a whip to keep Summer at a distance. These are Bloodborne characters. The whip, the threaded cane, the saw cleaver, and the hunter's axe. Crow focused on Lunaria. Where was I? Crow focused on Lunaria as the two clashed blades. Crow had a height and range advantage, but Lunaria was matching him in strength and speed. Lunaria flung him into a pillar in the city ruins biome. Crow looked over and saw Raven hit Chrome with her sword. That won't work, you know, Chrome said sleepily. I'm a Blackwater. A massive black Efreet rose from his back and took the form of a pitch-black monster with a white X over his face. The apparition smashed the ground. It would appear that Blackwater lad has activated his semblance. Familiar allows him to summon the Dark Efreet to help defend him, the announcer said. Raven was forced to keep her distance, and she attempted to counter the Goliath. The Goliath. Chrome raised his sword and swung, unleashing a torrent of black energy hurling towards Raven. Raven dodged, and the energy was now heading towards Crow and Lunaria. Don't overdo it, Chrome, Lunaria said. Crow turned into a bird as she was distracted and used the energy wave to conceal his moves. He flew right in her face, causing her to freak out, and then he changed back and smacked her into the pillar. She unfolded her weapon to look more like a scythe. The radius of semicircle blades was the same length as the cleaver handle. The blade extended, and she leapt on top of a building and started firing the weapon's blunderbuss. Crow ran to the side and fired his own shotgun. The two fired back and forth, hitting each other at least once. Lunaria leaped from the building to slash at Crow, but Crow countered with a heavy strike. Lunaria summoned her familiar, a ravenous wolf, and it charged Crow. This was as good a place as any. Crow switched to scythe mode and spun it around rapidly, butchering the familiar. Lunaria didn't last much longer. Crow had greater reach, misspelled reach, more power, and his overall scythe skill simply outdid Lunaria. Lunaria Blackwater is out by knockout. Damn, Lunaria said, punching the ground. Summer was still keeping pace with Barry as the two traded blows, but Summer was able to outmaneuver him and sent him flying out of the ring, tying up his feet with the chain and smacking him with her halberd. Ty and Animal were still in their boxing match over in the geyser field. Raven took a big hit from Chrome and collapsed. Raven Bronwyn has been eliminated. Chrome didn't stop, though. He kept moving towards Raven. There was something unnatural about his movements. He staggered with each step. His head hung low. He wasn't in control. The Efreet smiled wickedly. Crow saw his father and Mr. Blackwater move from their seats. Instincts took over Crow's body. Raven! He shouted, running towards her. She stumbled and failed to get up. Chrome's familiar raised its sword and smacked her, and then Summer pushed her out of the way and took the hit. Summer was smacked into Crow, and Crow heard the buzzer. His aura was now in the red. Two more buzzers went off. Tying Xiaolong and Animal Kane have boxed each other into a double knockout. Summer dashed forward. He was the only one who could stand up against. She was the only one who could stand up against Chrome now. Lunaria and the others shouted at him to calm down, that he was letting that thing take control. Summer pleaded with him as well, but Summer's attacks were focused on the Efreet. I don't know how to deal with it, Chrome complained. It feels so comforting. Efreet is my friend, and he protects me. He's trying to kill my friend, Summer argued. That's not my fault. I just don't know how to deal with him, Chrome trembled as Summer shot at the apparition. Clearly, it was exponentially stronger than Lunaria's familiar. I can help you deal with it, Summer said. Her body was glowing white as she ran around Chrome at the speed of a hurricane. She used all that momentum to cut through the familiar and destroy it. Chrome shouted in pain as he passed out. Summer caught him and embraced him as he was trembling. Crow had finally made his way to Raven, who was already being comforted by Ty, and Summer handed Crow off to his team. We have a victor. Team Stark of Beacon will be progressing to the second round, Summer cheered for a second before dashing over to Raven. Why? Raven said. Why did you jump in front of him like that? Sometimes when a friend is in trouble, your body just moves, Summer answered. You shouldn't have taken that hit. You should have hit him instead. I wasn't thinking, I just moved. One day I hope you'll understand. You really are naive, Raven said. Crow gave a little chuckle. Sacrifice wasn't really something he nor Raven understood, but he was glad that Summer had done what she did. Crow looked up at his father, who just wore an unpleasant grin on his face. So yeah, that's Team Stark versus you. Versus, oh my God, see brain. I remember Arbiters from way back. They were Secret Guardians, right? No. They were secret, yes, but I wouldn't go as far to say they were guardians. Uh, that was Avarice's group. The Grim of Greed. So they were all like agents of basically Grim, whose purpose was really to make sure that like everyone loses, that like neither Ozpin nor Salem took over the world. They were like the great balancers. And then later on, like Blake and Yang both joined the Arbiters in RWBYond Generations. Chapter 11: Corvus, Bronwyn, and the Guardians of Mantle. Corvus made the long trek from Vacuo to the city of Atlas, capital of Mantle. His Blackbird form granted him safe passage above the numerous military encampments in the kingdom. Atlas had long been a fortress of a kingdom, yet they had been the most aggressive, especially against Vacuo. He arrived at his destination, the Schnee Estate, where there was some kind of ball going on. He perched himself on a ledge and spotted his contact. Elsa Gloss, the Winter Maiden, was dancing with Lord Jackson Schnee. She wore an immaculate dress of white and baby blue. He wore a perfectly tailored white military suit. They looked so happy together. They were childhood friends, and the Schnees were descended from the original Winter Maiden. Another lore bit. Let me blow my nose first. Come on, baby, just 2 more chapters. But yeah, the idea that like the Schnees are descended from the original Winter Maiden, who was also the master slash mentor of Salem. Salem was the second Winter Maiden in RWBYond. That's part of her backstory. And the various incarnations of Winter had always had a place within the Schnee's company, whether as a spouse, sibling, heir, or bodyguard. It was pointless to keep the maidens a secret from the Schnee Lord. So yeah, Weiss's great grandmother is the Winter Maiden during the end of the Great War. And I know I think I only had one Winter Maiden in the main RWBYond time period. Little girl, Ebony, and she becomes Winter's right hand. In the same way that like Glinda is Ozpin's right hand, the Winter Maiden becomes Winter's right hand. I don't know why I didn't just make. Actually, I know why I didn't just make Weiss or Winter the Winter Maiden. Uh, because I wanted for RWBYond Veil, I wanted a maiden who was just a little girl who couldn't properly use her powers. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a more cool idea. Uh, also took notice of him, and following the song gave Jackson a formal bow before she parted for the balcony. Corvus descended into a gargoyle before changing his form. Also leaned against the parapet above him and said her greetings. Corvus explained the current situations to her. She was overcome with joy at Amber and Acacia coming back together, and she expressed her desire to see her sisters soon. Also, the decisive hour is upon us, Corvus warned. Aye, that much I had assumed, Elsa said with grace. Jackson is with us in our endeavor. He knows all about the coming threat and is using his prestige to expand awareness of the Grim. You told him everything? Corvus said, a bit cross. Corvus, whether you like it or not, he is my fiancé. I am not in the habit of keeping secrets from him. He is a good man, the most wonderful I know. He too grows tired of this war. He seeks peace within the kingdom. He wishes to bring the knowledge of and technological might of Atlas to the world. Like Prometheus of ancient Mantle legend, he wishes to give man the next evolution of fire. Do you trust him? Corvus said coldly. I trust him far more than I trust any of you, Elsa shot back coldly. Obviously, she was taking offense to Corvus' doubt around her love. Duchess Gloss, a grave yet familiar voice said. Lord Schnee wishes for a toast and desires you at his side. I'll be there immediately, Lord Blackwater. Blackwater should be one word. She said with giddiness Corvus had never heard from her. Corvus sighed as he heard her walking away rather quickly. Oh, to be young and in love, Damien Blackwater said. He flipped from the balcony onto the neighboring gargoyle. His unkempt gray hair and beard looked out of place for the formal occasion, as did his dark suit and flowing trench coat. Hello, darkness, my old friend. The two rivals and allies stared at the starry sky peeking from the nearby mountains. The two shared all the important information and news from the months since they had last spoke. Damien had already brought him a drink, having spied Elsa conversing on the balcony. 3 months, and we'll have 3 months, and we'll be having a meeting on neutral ground. That's if everything goes smoothly. I will keep you posted if the timetable moves or for whatever reason. Aye, but it's the strongest, this General Arc desires. Then there is but one name to convince. Roman Ebony. Damien explained where to find General Ebony, and that she had no love for the other kingdoms. Corvus would need to convince. Corvus set out to Crete, where Roman Ebony stood as the first line of defense. Ebony's reputation preceded her. She had battled Haiyan Wukong to a standstill and had at one point bested Mei Long. Corvus knew he had no chance in a fight, but all he had to do was give her the invitation to hope that Damien, Elsa, and Schnee would take care of the rest. He tracked her down to the town of Corinth. A battle had just been fought. Ebony herself battled numerous Grimm. Every time she stood still, she became immovable. At the end of the battle, a few survivors were tied up and Ebony interrogated them. All but one wore the colors of Vacuo. The other looked to be from Mantle. But then Ebony pulled a Vacuan coin from his pocket. Corvus watched the altercation from his perch on a building. She knew the coin through the traitor's eye and left him in She threw the coin through the traitor's eye and left him in agony. Kind of hardcore. The others began panicking. One said something about a queen, which Corvus was unaware that Vacuo had a queen. Ebony was surprised as well as she shot the prisoner in the stomach for more information. When she got all she could, she killed them in cold blood. Corvus noticed that she was careful not to get blood on her clothes. Corvus made sure he bore no marker of kingdom allegiance, though he knew his reputation would likely precede him. General Ebony, he called from the shadows. What is it you want, Bronwyn? She said. You know who I am? I saw you perched on that building. That type of blackbird isn't native to Mantle, and even if it had somehow found its way this far north, it would have flown away from the sound of gunfire. So you saw me all that time, he said. I considered shooting you under the assumption that you were a spy, but Lord Blackwater has told me about you. He says you are a friend to Mantle. I'm a friend of Duchess Gloss and Lord Blackwater, and an ally for all of humanity. All? There's no point in stretching yourself thin. It is smarter to protect you and yours than to care for kingdoms that would just as soon see you lynched. She spoke with a venom in her voice. If she did know him, she would know that he mostly works for Vale and calls it home. But his ancestors originate in Vacuo. That always made his family important as Watchers of Remnant. I'm not asking you to care. I'm sure the others will explain it to you in a way I can't. But the thing that is coming, the things that are already here, they are a threat to Atlas as much as anybody else. I'm listening, she said coldly. So, Roman Ebony, she's like female Ironwood, is basically what I was trying to go with her. I don't know why I chose the name Roman. That gets confusing with Roman Torchwick. Uh, Ebony obviously is a type of wood, like a dark wood. But yeah, we're just meeting more characters. Chapter 12: The Truth and Those It Destroys. Raven dashed towards her opponent to the cheers of the crowd. She swung across Flair's chest, then swung down with an overhand strike. She flipped backwards and slung a pair of blade beams at the woman, knocking her off balance. Raven darted forward with a killer intent and cut along her opponent's stomach, ending the fight. She dropped to one knee and began panting. Flair Photos was far and away the most difficult opponent she had ever fought. But it was over. All of Vale was cheering. After a rough start to the tournament, an easy battle side by side with Ty, and 3 solo fights, Raven Bronwyn had won the 28th Vital Festival tournament. Her team rushed around her. Ty picked her up as they cheered. She couldn't even move her leg, and she was pretty sure she had been temporarily blinded in one eye due to Flair's semblance. Crow gave her a wink and a thumbs up, and Summer gave her a massive embrace. Raven softly hugged her back and sighed in content. Raven couldn't help but feel that Summer should have been the one to move forward. On paper, sure, Raven and Ty had the most tricks left up their sleeve after the battle with Team Black. Summer had exhausted every trick in her book to carry them to victory in what was being declared the greatest vital tournament fight in decades by the newspaper. In all honesty, they could have sent any combination and won the second round. Raven and Summer would have overwhelmed them with their speed. Crow and Raven would have set them up and knocked them down. Summer and Ty had the speed strength combo going on. Even Ty and Crow would have overwhelmed them with pure strength. But Summer had been adamant that Ty and Raven be the ones to go. They trained together the most. They could watch each other's weaknesses, and between the two of them, they were ready for anything. Summer had also taken advantage of her free time to actually befriended Chrome Blackwater. He still didn't seem all there, but when Summer was around, he was at least happy, and he had no fear of his power so long as Summer was around. That bit of observation came from his team. After conducting the arbitrary interviews and collecting her prize, Raven went back into her room. Summer was waiting for her at the door to the dorm building and asked what Raven wanted to eat. Summer wanted to celebrate by making whatever Raven wanted. At the height of the party, just as Summer was pulling a set of pastries out of the oven, Deacon Blackwater walked in alongside Professor Osmond and her father. Her father congratulated her formally but the conversation quickly turned against her. They were much more interested in talking to Summer. Apparently, Blackwater had worked with her parents in the past and was particularly interested in the skill she showed during the first round. Summer bashfully brushed off their badgering to try to put the focus back on Raven. And when her father turned the conversation towards the Faunus movement, Summer was getting extremely uncomfortable. Open conflicts between Faunus and the various kingdoms was getting more and more common. They were demanding full societal implementation. Mantle especially had denied their requests and sent them to the island of Menagerie, where they can maintain their culture. Mistral was in a hot seat from this, since the island was in their territory. It appeared that only Vacuo and to a lesser extent Vale cared to have Faunus within their population, and Mantle just wanted to use them for degrading labor. But Osmond had a gamble, but that someone of Summer's qualities could ease the tensions before they were too high. Summer was reluctant to give an answer. Agreeing to Osmond's plan would cause the Faunus to continue to be treated unfairly, but dissenting would cause them to rebel, which could cause bloodshed. Summer's good mood had completely diminished into a stammering mess of anxiety, so Raven answered for her. Absolutely not, Raven said. Raven, be reasonable, Craven argued. I am. Maybe a revolution is just what you old fools need. The Faunus have been unfairly blamed for the Great War for far too long, and if a revolution is what it takes to get you to listen, then so be it. So Raven, ally to the Faunus movement, this sets up her relationship with Adam later on, because I went with the very prominent theory that is actually still prominent, that Adam got the Grim Mask idea from Raven. They have similar fighting styles, they have similar color schemes. There was even a theory that Adam was Raven's bastard son, which never really made sense to me because he's very clearly older than Yang. So unless Raven had him when she was 16, before she joined Beacon, that just doesn't work. And we also know in canon now that Adam is originally from Atlas, and Raven is originally from the Mistral area, and so the two just is the timeline and placement just doesn't really make sense. Not that timeline and placement stuff in RWBY makes sense all the time. I'm just saying it's evidence against it. And we also know what Adam's eye color is now. There's a big theory that Adam's eye color was red, and that was going to signify that he was also a Bronwyn. I did not go with the route of him being Raven's kid. Again, because the timeline just doesn't make she's already a young parent to Yang, and Adam very clearly several years older. No, thank you. But I did make it to where Adam was Raven's pupil at one point, and was being groomed into to be an arbiter, a role that he rejected in favor of the White Fang. Raven, it's not that simple, Osmond cut in. You said yourself that discrimination and division is a disease, Raven cut in. Or did you forget the entire point of the Huntsmen? She eyed her father. Grandfather was there. He saw what division among people did. He played a hand in fixing it. If this is the next step, then you should either aid in it I'm trying to figure out what these words are supposed to be. If this is the next step, then you should either aid it or move out of the way of progress. I will not be talked down by you, Craven said. Blackwater rubbed his brow. It's out of Huntsman hands, Blackwater said. The people of the Mantle military, the higher-ups in Atlas Academy, my own superior, are submitting to the rule of those with power. People like Aishni are trying to conserve the way of life you've enjoyed since the end of the Great War. My father was there as well, and he feared this would happen so long as men retained power. It is a fear I share as well. Then can't you do something about it? Crow asked. The headmasters hold power, but we still answer to the kingdom's councils, Osmond explained. The headmaster of Atlas is being forced to submit to the council's will, Blackwater said. We're looking at a full-on military occupation, and if that happens, and it will happen so long as the Faunus continue to dissent, then it will violate international law for the Huntsmen to get involved. We don't answer to the kingdoms. Likewise, we can't do anything that puts us at war with them, Craven said. The Faunus are angry. A huntsman recently failed to save a Faunus child from a Grim, Osmond said. It could have easily been avoided, and the people of Menagerie are holding us responsible. We have to act quickly to pick a side, and this is the best course of action for all parties. Raven's right, Summer finally spoke up. If you knew my parents so well, then you would know that they believed in helping as many people as possible, no matter what. And what I'm hearing is a bunch of bullies trying to be mean to people who just want to sit in the same room as people like us. And if that's so bad, well, then maybe you forgot what bad is. He pointed a finger at the door. Now grab a pastry and help us celebrate, or leave. Summer putting her foot down, standing up for herself and for the Faunus. I do remember that this does lead into the Faunus Rights Revolution and Team Stark actually fighting in that conflict and kind of witnessing the birth of the White Fang. But we're halfway done with Stark Tales of the Old Huntsmen. And that's going to do it. I've been streaming for 2.5 hours now. This is as good a stopping point as any. Final thoughts on this first batch of chapters. I'm kind of impressed. Like, I would totally rewrite it. Like, I would completely rewrite everything if I were to do this today. Like, the dialogue would be completely different. The structure would be different. I would have this as 2 separate stories and not bouncing back and forth between the two. But as far as the actual events goes and the kind of like dynamics, I think I did fine on that. And again, like, this is the first thing I ever wrote. Granted, this is a rewrite of it. I don't remember what all I changed. Because I did rewrite it at some point, a couple months later. But, yeah, so far, so good. Next week, I think the new anime starts this week. So next week, I'm probably going to just do kind of a recap on that. But then, sometime before the end of July, I will finish Stark Tales of the Old Huntsmen and move on to RWBYond Veil. Where I will try to do, and I make no promises, actually, I will probably do 10 chapters of RWBYond Veil a week. So it'll take me 13 weeks to finish it. I was going to try to be like 13 chapters and get it done in 10 weeks. But with how long it took me to do the 12 chapters here, and with RWBYond Veil chapters being on average a little longer than this, we'll have to see how it plays out. I might switch back for it. I might do 12, 12, or 13, 13, then 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 until the end. Because I know the last few chapters of RWBYond Veil are also very long, so I might have to do like just the final 5 in a stream. But anyway, that's gonna do it for me. I'm exhausted. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you, Rick Sarts, again for the idea. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.